I'm alive. I shouldn't be.
He should not be alive. This is unfucking believable.
From the heart of trucker America, my boy Reed Coverdale, host of The Naturalist Capitalist.
This is what government does. It sucks.
If you think you're going to win people over by stating commonplaces, you're just selling the other part.
It is about dictating every transaction that you have for the rest of your life.
Mr. Potato Head.
Coverdale is the guy to be president of the United States.
You intimidated me with your perfect 74 stab.
That was the beginning of my problems.
He died doing what he loved, chasing a minor.
But I'll put a 50 cal attached to my Suburban.
Libertarians need to get out in New York.
The gulag is going to be in your house.
This guy's a fucking murderer. He deserves to be in a dungeon.
Gotta get him out of that truck at night and get him into the White House.
Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Naturalist Capitalist. Episode 199, coming right up on 200 fast. Thank you for the continued support, continued viewership, continued subscription, all of it. I appreciate all of it. Tonight on the show, it depends on who you ask whether or not he's a comedian, but if you accept the premise that he's a comedian, he's the most canceled comedian in the country. Josh Denny, how are you doing tonight?
Hey man, how's it going, Reed?
Good. So, are you a comedian, and why are you the most canceled one in the country?
Yeah, well, I definitely think I'm a comedian. I mean, I'm published, right? Is it how does that even what is the criteria of who's a comedian, right? And that's what I think is so funny is because people will be like, you don't have any dates right now. And I was talking with you before that. It's like, yeah, part of the point of being somebody who says I'm not going to do clubs or venues or even work with people that are forcing vaccine mandates. It's like, why would I? Yeah, the byproduct of that is that I'm going to be doing less shows, right? It's kind of like having principles. I said to you, I liken it to the fact that be like somebody during the segregation times being like, I don't believe in all this segregation. Anyway, I'm heading into dinner. The guy walks into a whites only restaurant. They're just like, the fuck are you doing? He's like, well, I don't know. But have you had their chicken pasta? It's amazing. Like, listen, I don't like it, but you know, I'm not going to not eat at the place I want to eat. And that's the problem with America. That's how we treat our principles and our values. We just go, this is what I believe in. And somebody goes, how's $5 sound? And they go, I don't give a shit about it anymore. And then that's why we're living in a tyrannical authoritarian regime right now.
100%. So you say a lot of things that, you know.
Oh, the second part of your question, was why am I the most canceled? I don't know. I've pontificated this with people many times. Why my tweets rile people up the most, and I have people trying to cancel me more frequently than everybody else. But I think it's because I'm very good at wording things in a way that triggers people.
Yeah, I mean, the stuff you say, the inverse of whatever you're saying certainly would not cause the same shitstorm. If the left were saying something equally as edgy or equally as, pioneering in thought, it would not get even close to the same backlash. It seems like there's a very one-sided wall of outrage that comes whenever you make your jokes.
Yeah, and it's really like I'll really fucking blow your mind about it. It's 90% of the time they're not even mad at what I said. They're mad at what they think I said, which is amazing, right? Like I'll use the Trevor Noah one, for example. Trevor Noah did a piece on his show where they go, he owned Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson about what it means to be black in America. And it was nothing like that. And of course, this was before Joe's N-word controversy, right? That everybody's talking about. And so anyway, I just took the tweet of them sharing Trevor Noah's piece. And I just said, Trevor Noah has only lived in America as a millionaire. I know more about being black in America than Trevor Noah. And the amazing thing is that, like, if you go through the comments, it's like 6,000, 7,000 negative comments, something like that. And all the quote tweets of people sharing their 2 cents. There were 2 overwhelming sentiments. Number one, everyone couldn't wait to tell me that he grew up in South Africa during apartheid, which, by the way, has fucking nothing to do with my comment about. It's exactly what I'm saying.
Black person in America.
Yes,
South Africa.
Exactly my point. And so, so what people are saying is racism everywhere, which nobody would disagree with, right?
Right.
Except they would disagree when I go, exactly. Just like, so racism towards a white person is the same as racism towards a black person. And they go, no, because racism has to include prejudice plus power. So now we're getting into all these mental gymnastics where basically the only thing that's racist is whatever black people say it is, which is fucking insane. The other thing is, everyone took from that once you become a millionaire, you stop being black, or that only black people can be poor. That's the only experience. That's the default experience in Black America. And I like a lot of my comedy. A lot of what's funny about it is what I don't say and what people assume. And so what was amazing to me was I go, it's interesting that that's what everyone projected on it. So it's like, is that really my opinion or is that your opinion? And the funniest side I said was, after the whole thread went for like 2-3 days and went viral, and it went viral because the Trevor Noah was trending, and then my tweet was like the second or third one in that trend. And so naturally and it was definitely the one that was getting the most engagement. And everybody was sort of like, what could you possibly know about what it is to be black? And I go, if I read your 7,000 comments, I would just assume it fucking sucks. Like, not a single person has said one positive thing. And also this intimation, this idea that I was intimating that black people in America are only poor, like that's the black experience. My primary argument for why America is not systemically racist, if you listen to my podcast, if you watch me on Tower Gang, if you watch me on anything else, I've always stood by the fact that the reason America isn't systemically racist is because we're the greatest producer of black wealth in the world. There's not another country that has produced as many black millionaires and billionaires as the United States. That is evidence that if the system is oppressive, it's not working as well as they wanted it to, right? So it's just like this idea that people want you to defend things you don't say is why you can't go out and make public apologies like Joe Rogan just did.
Right. Yeah. The thing with Joe Rogan, it disturbs me on 2 levels. So the first level is saying the N-word in context has only been taboo for like a couple of years. My dad is a high school English teacher, and he would teach Huckleberry Finn.
Sure.
And he would read parts of it in class, and he would always just say nigger as it's written in the book, never as an insult to anyone or as a derogatory statement. It's just a word that your mouth makes a sound and a word comes out. And if you've read Huckleberry Finn, the whole point of that fucking book is that these white people are treating these black people like trash. And I think his name's Tom, the black character in the book. He's more of a human than most of these white assholes who are running the world at the time.
Jim, I think it was. I think the black character.
Jim, that's right. Jim.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad would be ashamed. I forgot the name already. But
son of a bitch. That's your white privilege, Reed.
Exactly. But I mean, he would read the book out loud and say the word because it's in context, in a sentence, in a book he's reading. And it wasn't until a few years ago that he stopped doing that in a public classroom because people were finally like, hey, Mr. Coverdale, probably shouldn't say that anymore. So
let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question on that, just while we're talking about the
Sure.
subject of learning about it in school and hearing that word in school. When you heard that word in school, when your teacher said it to you, did you feel like they were giving you a pass, or do you feel like having to hear that word and read that word and say that word out loud actually made you feel how gross and shameful that part of our history was? Like, I actually think white people having to say it when they're discussing the historical context. I remember having to give a book report on the book Native Son, and I remember having to go up in front of the class and use those words in front of black students and see their discomfort with it and share the discomfort with them about it. And then there was sort of this feeling of like, man, aren't we glad that we don't live in these times together? So I actually think by censoring the word, you're hurting what that book and what discussing it, not just Huckleberry Finn, but Native Son and some of these other ones, even Othello, what experiencing or going through these historical things together can actually do to build relationships with people.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the more, like they're doing that in video games now. They're like taking the swastika out of the Nazi party. I mean, in World War II video games, they're like erasing all the symbolism, and they're trying to I can understand, like, I don't necessarily agree, but I can understand not wanting Confederate memorials. It's a sentiment I can understand, like in a town square. Like I can understand where you're coming from, but people want like Gettysburg battlefield to be erased of any Confederate symbolism, and they want the museums to be, taken down. They don't want like any reminder of anything in our history. And I mean, this is just the next step, like by saying you can't say certain words from the past. You can't.
Well,
show,
do you know why they want all the traces of that history erased, Reed? So they can reinvent what happened.
Yeah.
People want to lie and reinvent what happened, right? Like part of the reason they have to erase all the real history, part of the reason why there isn't a movie about William Henry Ellison is because it defeats that narrative. Do you know who William Henry Ellison was?
I don't.
He was basically the Jeff Bezos of funding the Confederacy. He was also one of the largest plantation owners in South Carolina, and he was also black. He was, and it's rumored that he was the half-black son of the slave owner who originally owned the plantation and left it to him when he died. But that slave owner was the creator of the cotton gin. And because William Henry Ellison apprenticed under him and learned it, learned about the technology and everything else, he inherited the plantation. And I have a piece that I won't put my special event. We get to do it here in the near future, where I kind of talk about, could you imagine what that day would be like if you were one of the slaves on plantation? It's probably like how black people felt when Obama got elected president, where they're like, finally, all the things we've dreamed about and we've wanted. And then he's like, not so fast, blacks, get the fuck back to work. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
right.
It's this huge slap in the face of reality. But he also sent his black sons into the war on the side of the Confederacy to fight for the Confederacy. And so what the existence or the discussion of somebody like William Ellison does is it makes us ask more questions of like, wow, so like, what are the other components involved in the Civil War that would actually make a fucking black man spend his money and send his sons to war, against the idea that they wanted black people to be free? And so that's the thing, is like the reason they want to erase history is because they want to be able to just go, the Civil War was just about a Holocaust on black people. Nothing to do with its right. It had nothing to do with individual liberty. It had nothing to do with the economy. Like a lot of people don't know. And I'm not like a super well-researched guy. I just remember what I've read from different books and stuff. This isn't my specialty, but there's a lot of stuff that you can go read, how much of the anti-slavery publications only raised the question of morality around slavery because they knew that without slavery or even indentured servitude, the American economy would fail, and that would force us back into debt with the Bank of England, and we would essentially cease being a country. So it wasn't like the North was all good-hearted white people who just wanted to free black people. There was an economic component and an evil component about destroying what the United States was and basically making us colonies again with Britain and making us have to go back to daddy and go, we didn't make it on our own. They took our slaves away. I need to move back into the garage, get my shit together, Great Britain. So it was kind of like, it wasn't this noble thing. There was pernicious agenda on the side of the North. There was some pernicious agenda on the side. There was certainly people on the South who were like, we view this as a subhuman class. This is our property, whatever. There was definitely that. But there was also all these other nuances to it that never get discussed or taught in school. Like nobody taught us about William Ellison when we covered the Civil War. Nobody tells you about British nationalist print shops who were truly trying to only raise the moral question of slavery to bankrupt America and put us back into debt with the Bank of England. And maybe it was because they thought we were stupid. But now we're in a situation where there's a massive attempt to completely erase what actual history was and just create this narrative that there was a black Holocaust in America for 400 years, and it was just because of hatred.
Right. And they don't tell us about the Emancipation Proclamation not freeing slaves in the North, only in the South. They don't. I mean, there's so many different things about the Civil War, but anyway,
or the
original
fact that the Atlantic slave trade was, something that every nation that had a coast on the Atlantic participated in. Portugal, Spain, Latin America, the the islands, so it was just one of those things of like, the argument I always give with people when they talk about the racist history of America is I say, I'll ask you this question. If you had a time machine and I told you could go back and erase slavery and therefore Jim Crow, okay? But black people will never ascend to the level of wealth and prosperity that they have in America today. Would you go back and erase it?
No.
Meaning you'd only be able to achieve what the average black person achieves in every other developed nation in the world. Would you go back and erase it? And, if you ask a wealthy black person who's doing very well in America, they go, fuck no. Right? You ask somebody who's struggling, they go, yeah. So it's really all about perspective. Morality goes away very quickly with people when you just really narrow it down to what their real experience is.
Right. Yeah. So my original point there was that they're frying Joe Rogan over just using this word in context in a sentence, which is absolutely ridiculous. But in my opinion, even if he was using it as an insult or in a derogatory way, I mean, you could stop watching his show. You don't have to listen to him anymore. But this, like, I don't care. I mean, I don't care. I think it's disgusting. I think, Dan Crenshaw, that Joe Rogan has had Dan Crenshaw on his show and made him out to look like a decent human. In my opinion, that's a lot worse than using some slur word, and I'm not trying to get him kicked off his platform. I know. Dan Crenshaw is an advocate for genocide, and he's also someone who believes in red flag laws, in giving the police crazy powers over people and basically not giving them any accountability. He has all sorts of horrible views, and Joe Rogan's had all sorts of people on like that, and no one cares about that at all. They care much more about some word he said. And I don't know, just the selective outrage is ridiculous. But even if somebody says something you really disagree with or says something really abhorrent, the idea that we should cancel them and try to get them deplatformed and try to run them out of civilization instead of, battling their ideas or just talking to them or just, trying to get people to listen to you instead is, I don't know. I mean, it's bringing our society down very quickly, because I feel like for the most part, it's what we used to do. We used to just disagree with people compared to where we are now. Now we just try to get rid of them if they say stuff we don't like.
Yeah. And it's a great point. And we talked about this a little bit before the show, I think, as well. But like the only times I've ever made the choice, I guess I'll rewind a little bit. I don't think any white person in America has ever felt good when they've heard somebody actually use the N-word as a racial slur, right? Like,
right.
And the few times I've ever chosen to use that word in my act has been because I'm retelling a story where actually using the word is necessary to help you kind of travel to that place of feeling super uncomfortable. But I also have heard people use the word in a joke form where they're literally just making a joke. Like the famous Louis C.K. joke where he's like, that nigga made the shit out of my coffee. It's like, I laugh at that. And the whole audience in that crowd of that special laughed at that. I don't think anybody was like, that guy's fucking racist for saying the word in a joking context. And even going so far as to say, like with the Rogan, the Planet of the Apes joke, it's like, yeah, that's a racist joke. Jokes can be racist, and you can tell racist jokes and not be racist, right? Like, It's funny. And by the way, if we just made it a universal rule that you can't joke about race as a comedian, then every black comedian is going to have to find a fucking job tomorrow, because their entire act is about how stupid and silly and dumb white people are, right? And so it's just like, my point of view is, throughout my life, based on my different life experiences, I've been pretty interactive with black communities, black people, and black culture. I'm going to fucking talk about it. I'm going to talk about how they interact with me or how they receive me. I'm going to talk about the funny shit I notice about them. That's what that's my lived experience. And I'll be goddamned if anyone's going to fucking tell me what I'm limited to talking about in my actual life experience based on the color of my skin. Sorry, that sounds like racism. So it's like, if I'm going out to dinner with a black girl I'm dating and somebody does something racist, I'm going to fucking talk about that however I want to talk about that. And if and this is what's so funny about the warriors on Twitter, they go, come to my neighborhood and say it to my face. I wouldn't do that because that would be racist, right? You come to my comedy club, hear me do the bit, watch everyone laugh, and then try to run up on stage. You'll look like a fucking idiot. You'll get tackled. You'll get the shit kicked out of you by everyone else in the audience because you're a lunatic. You know what I mean? It's just like, we're not talking about the same things. And this idea, I said this on Twitter the other day, the real N-word we should be talking about, that is the fucking 300-pound elephant in the room that nobody wants to address, is nuance. And the idea, this manifestation that there's no context in which the N-word is acceptable for a white person to use is so reductive to the intelligence of black people. They're literally saying, because you're too stupid to comprehend the difference, then we have to make it not okay at all.
Right.
Like, do you understand what you're placating into, Black America? If you're going, there's no difference between comedians using it, or like you used earlier, using it in the context of teaching or educating or even reviewing a literary work, and somebody actually throwing an ethnic slur in someone's face from a perspective of hatred, what you're doing is you're saying, black people, you're too fucking stupid to know the difference. And black people are going, yeah, we're too stupid to know the difference, so we're going to treat it all the same. It's so the infantilization of black people in the name of progress in this country is fucking disgusting. It's insane. And I have hundreds to thousands of black fans that you can go read in my comments, agree with my sentiments. They feel the exact same way, and they're pissed off about it. It's like, the more you pretend you don't know the difference, the more stupid you make us all look.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this is intentional. I don't think that most black people really care. I think that this is a top-down attempt.
Did you see
to divide
Klug's
people.
video? Did you see Klug's video where we went? So I think it's James. Let me make sure I get it right because I don't want to credit him wrong. I think it's James. It's either James or Jason Klug. Let me find it. People can go on my Twitter, and I shared his video a couple days ago. James Klug. His Twitter is @RealJamesKlug. And he did a thing about the Rogan thing. He said, do people care? He walked down the Venice Boardwalk. He talked to white people. He talked to black people. Overwhelmingly, black people didn't give a shit. White people thought he needed to be completely removed from the internet.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think if you were somewhere other than the boardwalk, if you were just at a random job site, you would find most people don't give a shit. I mean, I work a blue-collar job. You know, I'm a trucker. I go to a lot of truck stops. Before this, I used to work on power lines. You'd be working with 5 or 6 people on a job site or something. I mean, the most barbaric, disgusting.
Also, probably very different ethnicities in your crews, right?
Yeah, like I worked on a roofing crew. The power lines were in New Hampshire, so everyone in New Hampshire is white. But the roofing crew I worked on in Colorado, yeah, it was black people, Mexicans, white people, Asians. I mean, all sort. And that's the place where the worst jokes by far I've ever heard in my life came out on that job.
Yeah. I mean, but it's part of building camaraderie too.
Exactly.
You know, yeah. my father worked at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. He was in the Navy and then worked at the shipyard his entire life until he retired early in the 90s when the shipyard, right before the shipyard closed. And he would take me to work as a kid with him sometimes. And the shit I would hear people of different races say to each other by the way, in a government job. And it was just like, yeah, man, that's just how we fuck around with each other. That's how we get through the day. Like, otherwise, we're literally just running rigging equipment through dry docked aircraft carriers and submarines. And if we all had to do that in silence, we'd blow our fucking brains out. It's so, it's so tactical and sort of mundane. And it's like, so, this idea, I actually think the push to control language is about resegregating America. I think the people behind it are trying to resegregate America. I think the people in favor of it are trying to resegregate America.
I mean, they're sort of admitting it. Like, some colleges think it's a good idea to go back to segregation, I've heard over the last few weeks. I mean, they're just straight up saying it. They're not even just insinuating it.
Well, and there are these people, and I got sucked into it too. Like when I had my first cancellation in 2018, I went on TMZ, which I should have known right away was a bad idea. But the host, Van Lathan, had just gone viral for that Kanye outburst where Kanye said 400 years of slavery is a choice, and Van kind of went in on him. And I was like, okay, well, when white people get into this, they step in shit racially. They always run to the right and go talk to Tucker Carlson or somebody else who's white. I wanted to be like, fuck that. I'll go sit down and talk to a black person because I believe this shit. I believe what I think. I stand by my opinions. And I know I'm not a racist, so I'm not afraid to sit across from a black person and dispute ideas. What I didn't understand or account for is he did not have good intentions. He did not. It wasn't like an innocent interview. So like you and I discussed before we did this broadcast, I said, hey man, are there any words I'm not allowed to say on this podcast? Like, we're going to discuss the word nigger in the context of using it in film and art and music and comedy. So let me know ahead of time if that's going to be a problem. And he goes, nah, man, say whatever you want. If TMZ has a problem with it, they'll just bleep you. And I go, okay. So when we get to that point and I start talking about when I've used it in a joke and I use the word, he stops me, creates a moment of outrage, and tries to make me look like shit on his show. And you see me in that moment get bright fucking red because I'm literally sitting there like, you motherfucker, you did this on purpose. Like, you lied to me so that I would do this and you could fucking put this on me. And you could see him get angry in the video and like ball his fists up. And I call that out and try to hit me by making clenching your fist over there. And then he just continued like race baiting, like, oh, why are you putting violence? Why are you assuming a black man's about to get violent? I go, dude, I know men. When a man balls his fucking fist and grits his teeth at you, he's trying to tell you that you're ready to fight, right? Like, let's not pretend that's not a real thing. So it's just like, there's so much intellectual dishonesty from the black people in media now when you try to have these conversations or discuss these things where it's like, there's not an agenda of getting to an area of agreement or a commonplace. This is literally black supremacy, people who are actual true black supremacists pretending that they're progressives. And they are pro-segregation. They're there's so many things that are not progressive in that tract of ideology that's not the America I want to live in.
Yeah, and I think this is hijacked by greater powers than just some people who feel this way. Like, I think 20 years ago, a lot of corporate interests were kind of fueled by right-wing ideology, but around, I don't know, probably 10 years ago now, the hands switched. It kind of switched to left-wing ideology driving more, more corporate interests. And obviously it bleeds into both sides. But lately it's been like a lot of the woke, racially charged shit that the big corporations have totally got behind. And if you have any sort of dissenting opinion that threatens the corporatocracy, that's when they weaponize racism against you. That's exactly what happened to Joe Rogan. I mean, if anyone thinks he's being canceled because people are suspicious that he might be racist, you're retarded. That's obviously not what it's about. It's because he had dissenting opinions about COVID stated on his show that millions of people listened to, that started making them skeptical of the official narrative. So then they're like, aha, we got to do something. They did it to Tulsi Gabbard with, opposing the war in Syria. Oh, guess what? Guess who likes Tulsi Gabbard? David Duke likes Tulsi Gabbard. They did it with Ron Paul with the newsletters once he started getting popular. Like, it's very, very selective. What's that?
I said I remember that when they did that to Ron Paul when he was running for president.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of wild. And this is what I always say is like, you have to be careful because so much progressivism is a Trojan horse for something else. Like, let me give you an example. We carved out like plots of land for Native Americans. We did the casino thing. We do tremendous amount of tax breaks, right? But wrapped inside those rules, here's an interesting thing. In order to get Native American benefits, most tribes require a specific percentage of native blood called blood quantum, in addition to being able to document which tribal member you descend from. Some tribes require as much as 25% native heritage. Most require at least 1/16 native heritage. I didn't know that, which is one great grandparent, which I believe I have. So I actually am entitled to Native American benefits that I don't claim. But my point is interesting that the rules are like that. Main a certain percentage, right? So couldn't you simply say, and this is kind of what people talk about the welfare laws, about how we essentially incentivize black mothers to kick the black father out of the house to collect welfare benefits. So that was actually designed to harm the growth of black families and to destroy the black nuclear family economically. So now you're basically saying in order to receive these benefits, you're not allowed to race mix. So essentially, the government is creating things that are forcing these minority groups to stay amongst themselves, right?
Yep.
How fucking gross is that? It's so terrible. So that's my ploy to so many Americans is like, read some of this shit, like and read between the lines. There are some powers at work here who are trying to keep us from becoming united, both genetically, physically, biologically, and definitely from a socioeconomic perspective.
Yeah, 100%. So let me ask this. It seems like, I mean, I would agree that there's been a huge negative side to all this woke bullshit and this, cultural progressivism that we've had. Has there been anything good about it? Like, obviously, I think it's a good thing that people feel ashamed to call someone the N-word in a derogatory way. Like, it's good that, like, okay, you actually feel like a piece of shit if you do that now, or
or if you're in the presence of somebody who does it.
Yeah. So, like,
I don't even think you have to do it yourself. You could just be, if you're around some, like, there would be so many times when I was traveling the road in my early days of comedy, we were doing shitty one-nighters in North Dakota, and it would be me. And for the most of my time as a headliner in my early years of stand-up, my opener was a black comedian, a good buddy of mine named Kevin Kraft. And people would come up to us after the show and say racist jokes and shit all the time because he and I would joke with each other about our race on stage.
Right.
He would tell jokes shitting on me, and then I would tell jokes shitting on him and the things he does that black people do. And it was a fun back and forth. The audience doesn't know they're not allowed to participate in that. So they'll come up and they'll tell us all their racist jokes, and they're not professional comedians. So some of them are just offensive. Some of them are funny or whatever. But there would be a huge difference between somebody coming up and attempting a joke and attempting to relate and using the N-word or something, or even saying that's racist without using that word, where we would just kind of both brush it off and be like, yeah, dude, they're just trying to relate to us. But if somebody literally came in and was like, get you and your fucking black piece of shit out of here, like those are fighting words, we would have been fucking scrapping. You know what I mean? And so, and there were times like that where that happened, and we didn't have to do shit because the owner of the bar or some other big fucking dudes who were there enjoying the show, they handled that. They would literally pick that motherfucker up, take him outside, and stomp him. So it's like, and sometimes it was the guy who just told us a really clunky, shitty, racist street joke from like the 70s, and that guy walked away. And Kevin and I would look at each other and be like, man, that guy might be actually racist. And then somebody would come in and say something really racist, and that guy would take him outside, beat the fuck out of him. And then we go, no, that guy's our buddy. Now when he comes back in and his knuckles are all bloody, then we're going to fucking buy him drinks and hang out, So it's just like all of these attempts to say that there's certain things about the black experience that white people just can never understand. What you're kind of saying in that to black people is, don't even try to teach them. Don't even share your stories with them. Don't bring them into your communities. It's literally a pro-segregation mindset. And it's not a progressive way to look at America. And I don't know about you, Reed, but I'm one of these guys who found myself being like a leading libertarian after spending my entire life considering myself a fringe left liberal. Like I was legalized everything, let people put whatever they want in their bodies, legalize prostitution, what I consider to be a super left-wing person, and a totally free speech and art and comedy and everything. And then now those are all like right-wing libertarian values.
Yeah.
And the left is the side that's pushing for all of these things that are actually super regressive in the name of progressivism.
Yeah, it's very ironic. I mean, I grew up on the other side. I'm younger than you, but I grew up in like the neoconservative evangelical right-wing movement of the early 2000s. And what I eventually realized is there's nothing conservative about this. And so I'd say, I don't know, probably 2014, 2015, I started drifting out of my extremely conservative bubble. And I very temporarily kind of looked at the left just to see what it was about. And it became obvious very quickly that they were not liberal, in the true sense of the word at all. And there were a few people that stuck out to me who were, and some of these people have disappointed me lately. But one guy, do you remember when Sam Harris was on Bill Maher's show and Ben Affleck went after him about the Muslim stuff? I'm assuming you probably saw that.
Yeah, very near and dear to my heart because my girlfriend of 10 years is Middle Eastern, and so I'm intimate. I have an intimate understanding. Again, granted, not firsthand because I'm not brown myself, but I have an intimate understanding because I've listened to stories from her and her parents and her family about what it was. They came to America during the Iranian Revolution. And so I have a better than the average white person understanding of just how ruthless the religious persecution is in the Middle East and some of the real life effects that's had on people in my life that I love and care about. And so I took a vast interest in that clip. And I 100% agree with, Bill Maher and Sam Harris. Affleck's trying to paint them as racists and bigots, and it's like, no, these are the real hard facts about religious ideology that people don't want to talk about.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I got all sorts of disagreements with Sam and Bill on foreign policy when it relates to the religion. But as far as as far as the religion goes, they're not wrong when they describe the intolerance of it. And just like how I watched Sam Harris.
Political correctness, we're vastly approaching a point where political correctness is going to prevent us from calling truly evil things evil, like that kind of religious ideology, or the idea that pedophilia is just a preference. It's like, these are really fucking evil things that exist in the world, and you're attempting to normalize them in the name of progressivism, and that is something that needs to be fought against.
Yeah, 100%. And I remember Sam Harris went on Cenk Uyghur's show, The Young Turks, for a 3-hour debate. I don't know if you ever watched that. That was completely a waste of time, but it was the same. I mean, it was just like a logic, fact-based argument against outrage, and then throughout the last few years, a lot of these people that I considered kind of liberal warriors for free speech have really disappointed me. Bill Maher is probably like one of the only mainstream people who's done like a sort of okay job throughout this whole time. But I mean, it's like I used to
don't you feel like you're watching him slowly drift to the right on his show every week?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, it seems that way because they just, I mean, when you're faced with the amount of stupidity we've had the last couple of years, your gravitational swing will just change, if you have any sanity at all. But
I have a question for you on Reed.
Sure.
So I imagine you see a lot of that. We got into a discussion on this on the thread, and then we talked about it on my Spaces last Friday. But I watch a lot of people move from the left to the right by the nature of living in Los Angeles, and I find that more of those people are women. And we were pontificating on why that might be the case. And one of the conclusions I arrived at was, I think women care far more about being lied to than men. And so I think when you look at like the amount of broken promises of the government and the amount of those types of things that have not come true, or even like all the medical and health advice that has turned out to be wrong and misguided and uninformed and motivated by profit, I think women have a far more explosive reaction to discovering those things than maybe men do. And so I think that's why so many more, at least in my experience, women are coming from the left to radically to the right, just in their own personal discovery of information. Do you find that to be the case with people in your world or in your circle?
I don't know. I mean, unfortunately, I have like a 95% male following, so it's hard to judge. But
gay guys, I get it. I'm with it. No, I'm just
I think the thing with the women is probably two things. I think women are just naturally more trusting than men are. That they'll kind of take people's word a little bit more than men will in general. And then the other thing is
stupid and gullible. I gotcha. Yeah. See, I'll do to you what the people do to me. I'll just put words in your
it's
mouth.
Perfect. I love it. The other thing is, women are mothers a lot of the time. And if the government is telling you to do something to your children that will make them healthier, and then you find out it's a lie, obviously, if you're a father, you're going to get upset too. But if you're a mother, like and the government has been telling you, you need to do this and it will keep your child healthy. And then they see that they've been blatantly lied to for 2 years, you're going to radicalize a lot of people. So I would guess it's those two things that, they're more trusting and they have children. And when you fuck with their children, like, watch out.
It's a problem. Yeah. It's kind of like a mama bear mentality.
Yeah.
But going back to your original thing of like what other good has come out of it, I think the only good out of it is that it is waking people up. What I wish I saw more of in terms of the good is I wish more comedians would stop fucking bending. There's a lot of comedians that I really respect that have, quite frankly, and I'll look dead in the camera, you guys have pussy faggoty views about standing up to the mob when it comes to comedy, and you back down too easily, right? Like it's so the Joe Rogan thing disappointed the shit out of me, because his whole career he had the same philosophy about words and language that I do. He's done full bits about this exact thing, outrage over a sound that comes out of my mouth regardless of context. And then he completely betrayed that. And listen, I've worked with Joe a couple times. I met him. We've had conversations about stuff. He's a very nice, genuine, sensitive dude. And so it's very possible that even his family came to him and said, look, man, just don't put us through this. We don't want to go through this. And he made that decision selflessly for the other people in his life who don't want to have to fight the collateral battles that come with being Joe's daughter or wife. And then I could see that being a different situation than for me, a guy who doesn't really have a lot of like a big circle. I don't have kids or a family. And a lot of people don't know this, but Joe's oldest daughter, who's adopted from his wife's first relationship or marriage or whatever, is mixed. She's half black. And so that very well could have been a part of the, Dad, you're putting me in a tough situation. I'm trying to become an artist. I'm trying to become a musician. Now I got to deal with, your fucking dad is racist. And so he might have done it for completely unselfish reasons, even though he vehemently disagrees with that. And that means that man is a better fucking man and a father than he is a comedian. And that's more important, I think. Right. So I understand. I forgive it for him. Who I don't forgive it with are a lot of these other comedians who are just trying to avoid the heat and the smoke. And so they'll talk all day about the importance of free speech, but they won't ever actually take risks. And that's why every comedic thing that's come out for the past 10 years fucking sucks. Most of it sucks, right? You'll find some real great stuff. Ryan Long, fucking hilarious. His sketches are hilarious, right? All the guys and gal that I pal around with from the Compound Media Group, Chrissy Mayer, Gino Bisconte, Aaron Berg, all fucking hilarious, all unafraid to push any buttons. And there's so many more, like guys like Shane Gillis, Tony Hinchcliffe. These are comedians that I really like and respect and think the world of. But there have probably been times, if you go back and look, where they've all bent. Like Shane Gillis apologized for SNL. I would have literally went on stage and took a shit at fucking, whatever the studio number is where they do SNL. I literally would have left a big pile of shit on there and went out in a blaze of glory. And listen, maybe that's the kind of attitude that's held me back in my career. But I don't, like, to me, I only want to do this if I can do this the most free way and exactly how I want to do it. And, it's like Patrice O'Neill. He's like the good jokes and bad jokes and the mad successes and the failures, they all come from the same place. We're all just trying to be funny. And beyond that, some of us are trying to say something or even just point things out to people. And in a lot of my comedy, what I try to do is like point out to people that shit is not as bad as they tell you it is. And we don't have to hate each other for our differences. It can be fun. It can be silly. You can enjoy it. You can give each other shit about it. I really want to try to get people back to a place. Like I always say, I never want to try to tell the audience what to think. I just like to give them options on how to think. And so I try to present things in a different way than they've heard about them before and be outrageous and silly. And, there's very few people that are doing that anymore. That's what I love about working with Gavin McInnes is like I've never gotten a call or a text from Gavin like, whoa, dude, that joke on your show where you talk about Usher's kids drowning is not fun. Like, that's not okay. Like, I've never had that conversation with Gavin about the content in my show. If anything, I'll get a call or a text from him that's like, dude, you should have thrown this joke in there. And I was like, fuck, where were you? That would have been great. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's amazing because, throughout history, comedians have always been the ones who push the envelope. Like, I don't think anyone will be better than George Carlin. That's just my opinion. But that guy was always
we share that opinion.
Yeah, man, he would just always, push the envelope with thought on, skepticism toward what the government was doing or whatever it was through jokes. Like he would change the way people think by making a joke about something. That's the power of comedy. And now most comedians are not trying to change thought at all. They're saying things that are already mainstream and waiting for you to laugh at them afterward. Where's the value in that? That doesn't push anyone to think. It doesn't push anyone to change. It doesn't shock anyone and make them, revisit something. It's just completely dead.
Yeah, and it's tough as a comedian to bring up Carlin and how much I admire and respect him and how much I think it's my responsibility a little bit as a comedian to try to find a way to do what he did. And not exactly, but like, to your point, find a way to make jokes that kind of push people's buttons a little bit and go, yeah, like, why do I think that? You know what I mean? Like one of the bits I have, and I fucking use this as an example all the time, but I just think it's the bit that's my best example, is I do a bit about slavery. And the setup is I'm super lazy. If it were legal, I would totally have slaves. And the amazing thing is I let the room sit with that for a second. And then I point out to them that I didn't say what color they'd be. You just guessed because you're all fucking racist. And then immediately, if you have good diversity in the audience, the black people will start pointing at the white people and shitting on them like, oh, yeah, I go, you picked them again. You didn't have to pick them in your mind. You could have picked robots. You could have picked anything, right? Yeah. But I'm showing them that they automatically have this assumption. And there's so much more slavery in the world today that has nothing to do with black people in America that nobody bats an eye about, right? And then I launch into this thing of like, if we had to do that slavery over again, I think this time I would pick gay guys because I think they'd be way better based on the job description. I mean, it's a bunch of naked dudes chained up to a bunch of other naked dudes, and their job is to stand out in a field of sunshine and pick out fabric all day. That sounds pretty fucking gay. You know what I mean? They'd love it. And let me guess, if they do a bad job, it's a little whipping. If they do a good job, it's a little whipping. And at the end of the day, somebody might fuck you. It's like, that sounds like West Hollywood. Okay, so yeah, it's like they say, one man's trash is another man's nightclub. So it's a silly thing, but then there are literally people walking out going like, oh yeah, it's pretty silly and it's ridiculous, and we shouldn't be so sensitive about it. And so, I try to bring I like to try to prove to people that I'll literally make you laugh at anything. All the things you walked in here thinking, what, they make jokes about this, I'm not going to laugh. If they talk about this, I'm not going to laugh. I've tried to take that challenge and go, I'll fucking find a way to make you laugh about this horrible, awful thing. And sometimes it takes a lifetime to get there. But I think every comedian has some responsibility with that platform to try to do something that does that tries to get people to enjoy their life more or change the way they look at world. I mean, the whole concept of comedy is you're trying to bring people joy. There's a lot of different ways to skin that cat. And I don't necessarily know that a lot of comedians look at that in a deep way and say, how can I really bring people to a place of long-lasting, fulfilling joy? A lot of comedians just want to tell people what they already think and remind them that they're right and fucking ascend some kind of ladder to fame and wealth. And that's fucking gross, dude. That's corporatism. That's not comedy. That's not art.
Yeah, no, I mean, 100%. I couldn't agree more with what you just said there at all. It's really sad. I mean, if people go watch the intro I made to this show back 2 years ago when I first started doing episodes, one of the things I said was people don't like getting into conversations with people they disagree with because they're uncomfortable with the fact that somebody might say something that makes them wonder if they're wrong. Somebody you disagree with might say something that makes a little bit too much sense. And I think it's the same way with comedy. Someone might say something offensive that you end up thinking is funny. And then you retrospectively end up thinking about what was said and realize maybe I was wrong. And so this whole woke canceling bullshit, what it really is it's a phobia of finding new information, of expanding your knowledge, of hearing new ideas, because you are afraid, wow, I have not really thought about why I believe any of this shit. And, you know, if I actually entertain it, I might end up becoming that way because it might make sense to me. I mean, that kind of seems to be the root of the problem with all this stuff.
Well, and listen, it's like I'm all about the marketplace of ideas. So I'm never afraid to go into an environment where people disagree with me, because if my ideas suck, then maybe I should change them. You know, and
Right.
if they have better ideas that can articulate their point of view better, then listen, I famously say this, whatever, yank. But I, you know, on all my podcasts, when we talk about abortion, I'm trying to be very forthcoming about the fact that I've only been pro-life as recently as a few years ago. And it's because I brought on a conservative comedian named Adam Yenzer, who I've become very good friends with, who made great points about the argument for being pro-life and changed my fucking mind live on my podcast. Literally took away all my excuses, all my defenses, and we literally walked away, and I go, dude, you've converted me. You're right.
See, what you were supposed to do was say, how dare you hold this position, and just shun him the entire time.
Exactly. Well, and also just say, you're a man. Well, this is the reductive one. You're a man. You don't even get to have a thought or opinion about this.
Right.
And so, you know, as somebody I feel like my life has been enriched by being willing to put myself in uncomfortable positions and have hard conversations and defend my thoughts. It's made me a better person, a more well-rounded person. And those friendships become really, really great friendships and great relationships with people, because it's built on a foundation of true mutual respect for where each other is coming from. I say the same thing. Like, I agree with you when people go, you know, I don't want to even have conversations about that. It's like, well, you don't want to have the foundation of what you believe to be rocked to its core and be forced to look at yourself. And it's the same thing I say when you hear comedians go, I don't watch other comedians. I don't want them to influence me. And it's like, well, that's probably for two reasons. Number one, you don't want them to remind you how mediocre you are and how much work you have to do to get as good as them. Or on the flip side, you don't want them to present information that might contradict something you talk about in your material and then make you doubt yourself, right? And it's just like, then make a better bit. So like, I look at anytime I see a comic do a bit that's an opinion I disagree with, I don't jump on the internet and tell them they're wrong. I go, how can I make a bit that fucking crushes that bit?
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think that's what Carlin probably did back then. There wasn't Twitter, there wasn't the internet. Otherwise, I don't know how much time Carlin would have spent making specials and not fucking rage battling people on Twitter about their shitty opinions, right? He'd probably be on one of these networks like Daily Wire or something, just arguing with people all day because it was there. But what he did was he looked at what are the common consenting opinions, what's wrong with them, and how do I take an opposing viewpoint and make that entertaining? Because there were a lot of times where Carlin's best bits weren't even funny, but they were entertaining and incredibly insightful. And he put a lot of thought into them and developed them over time. I mean, you know, I've been a comic for 15 years. I've been developing some bits for that entire time, where there's the slavery bit is on my album from 2012. It goes in a completely different direction than where it is today. And so, you know, it's just, you sharpen that saw the more you do it. And, you know, if you're not engaging with people in any sort of meaningful way, I would challenge you don't really have any meaningful friendships. And it's so interesting that like the people like you and I who are willing to have these conversations, whether we agree or disagree, when you dig deeper, you find out like, oh, they actually have a loving wife of many years or a partner or whatever. They actually have a really great tight group of friends. They're really close with certain members of their family. You find out these people that personality trait leads to them having a much more fulfilled life. You talk to these people who don't want to let any other ideas in. They're miserable. They have no fucking friends. They spend all day on social media. Those two things are very connected. And so if you can't open your fucking mind, I feel sorry for you. Your life is inevitably going to be shit.
Yeah, I think, you know, it comes down to humility, really. You know, I used to be a neoconservative, you know, religious fanatic, basically. And now,
what religion were you brought up?
Christian, very Protestant evangelical.
Okay, yeah.
And by the way,
we were Protestant, but we were so Protestant we really didn't even fucking practice.
Oh yeah, no, I wasn't that lucky. I got all of it, but I do have to defend my parents. They were anti-war. They were the only ones in the family, at least on the East Coast, that were anti-war. Everyone else in my family was pro-war. My church was pro-war. You know, every institution
You're talking about
I
the
went to
Iraq War,
the Iraq War, and the Afghanistan War. But I do have to defend them on that front. But when I was in high school, I started trying to really dig into those kind of neoconservative, super right-wing Christian roots. And then once I got out of high school, I realized, wow, I don't talk to anyone who disagrees with me. I don't, try to find out truth. What I'm doing instead is I'm creating a narrative, and then I'm sifting all my life experiences out of the way and just, finding the parts that agree with my ideology already. And that's like showing up to a crime scene and, you've heard one of your friends is the suspect. You're going to do everything you can at that crime scene to try to find evidence to prove that it's not your friend, instead of just showing up with an open mind and being like, okay, who did this? What happened? And so I realized that was a mistake I had made in my life. And I think what really drove it home, I started traveling because I grew up in New Hampshire. I only traveled. Yeah, I only traveled out of state a little bit. Went to Arizona a couple times, flew there. But for the most part, like mostly in New England, never went anywhere, to have a culture shock much. And then in 2015, I went to, 2015 and 2016, I ended up going to all 50 states and meeting tons of different people. And I remember there was this one time I was in California up north in the woods at a gun store. And I was just like, okay, I'm out in the woods at a gun store in, like near Redding, California somewhere. This is not at all what I had in my mind when I thought of California. And you know why? Because I'd never been to California. So I had always thought that California was nothing but Hollywood Boulevard. And so when I went there and I went
blonde
to
hair and big tits, and you were like, what are all these Mexicans doing it now?
Yeah. So when you actually go and you meet the people and you see the entire state and you go everywhere, and this also goes for Alaska, Hawaii, wherever, like you have a preconceived idea of what something is. And if you actually go to it and try to experience it, you realize you were wrong, that there's way more going on, that you had a very simplistic view. So it made me think, what else have I been wrong about? Like probably everything. Sure. So I just started from square one and I was like, I want to know, what's going on. I want to know what's true. And that has really led me to this type of mindset you're talking about, where you just want to sit down and talk with anyone and see how they got where they are and, try to convince them of your opinion. And, maybe in convincing them of your opinion, you actually realize that you were wrong again and that they were right. And if you are actually right, maybe they'll realize you're right. And it's just a win-win. So why ever turn down a conversation? Why ever turn down a thought experiment? But that's being so pushed aside these days. Everyone wants their comfortable belief system that they have come up with, and they don't want anyone to touch it. And so, really biting comedy is a threat to that style of thought, because it makes you laugh. And then after you laugh at something, you usually end up thinking about it. And that's dangerous to the status quo.
Certainly. Yeah. I mean, it started for me a little earlier than you because I grew up and I moved schools a lot as a kid. So I was constantly having to like reintroduce myself to new kids. I changed schools, going from like preschool to elementary. We moved towns. And then I did my first grade through fourth grade in the same city. And then I moved to Philadelphia, which was only an hour away from where I was going to school in Delaware. And that was when my parents split. And then I went to school in like the Philly area for 2.5 years, and then went back to that place in Delaware, then moved to Minnesota in 10th grade. And so, what was I going to say? That process of constantly going to new places and having to introduce yourself to new people. And then with my first professional job working at Hollywood video stores, I quickly rose the ranks and was traveling to other territories to do training and then eventually to manage those places, South Dakota, North Dakota, all over Minneapolis. And then I joined Crocs and I was responsible for the entire, Northeast United States. So I was traveling Pittsburgh, Chicago, Michigan, all these places, building these markets and meeting all these people. And then I got into comedy and I started traveling the country, meeting all these different people. And then even after I moved to LA, I had a corporate job for the first few years. But, when I got kind of fired from one in 2013, first time I'd ever been fired, and they tried to scapegoat my comedy as the reason they fired me. But it was really because I whistle blew on them something they were doing that was illegal. And we sued them and settled out of court. But I started doing Uber driving in 2013 to supplement my income because California uninsurance was nowhere, or unemployment insurance. Sorry, I sound dyslexic. But California unemployment insurance wasn't anywhere close to what I was making or what I needed to pay bills. So I was like, I'll just start Uber driving. And I did that for like all the way up until the start of the pandemic. And I can tell you, like, I did somewhere like 30,000 rides over that 8-year period or whatever. And I met a cross section of people in Los Angeles that you couldn't possibly meet any other way. And I've literally listened to the life stories of like people from all over the world, all over this city, all different kinds of Latino people, Hispanic people, Black people, white people, from all Asian people, from all different walks of life. And so if somebody comes up to me and goes, "You're white, what could you possibly know about other people in the world?" It's like, why don't you ask? Are you really genuinely asking? And how much time do you have? Because I'll walk you through some shit. And so it's like I've listened to probably thousands of hours of people telling me about their firsthand life experiences. And so as a person who's naturally curious in people, I love that part of it. And not doing it, I miss that part of it. I do think there is something really romantic about just putting two strangers in a situation and forcing them to interact with each other. It's the most organic form of human experience you can get. And it's like I literally get to go on a blind date with fucking half of the city at different times. You know what I mean? And yes, a lot of people suck, by the way. Let me put that out there. A lot of fucking people just fucking I lost 100 followers today on TikTok. What the fuck? Like, there's a lot of that, but you'll also meet these amazing people with incredible fucking life stories, and you'll build long lasting relationships. Like, I made a friend who was a food blogger from Denmark, and I still, we stayed in touch for many, many years over social media, and then just kind of like lost touch and everything. But it's like, you meet these people in these random environments, and it really does bring a lot of depth to your world experience and your perspective on human beings. And I just don't think enough people put themselves in situations like that to allow humanity to surprise you. And that's the one thing, like, if I talk to friends of mine, they're like, I'm so fucking dejected about women, or if it's vice versa, if it's a woman friend of mine, she's like, I'm so tired of men. I go, like, you cannot give up on the hope that people can still surprise you. Right? Like, that is what makes us human. And you have to be brave enough in yourself to understand that people can still surprise you. The minute you lose that hope is when the despair and the depression and the self-hatred really starts to settle in. And, so it's like I just love people. I love being around people and talking to people. And that's why I do a podcast. And that's why I do all of the podcasts that people come to me to do, whether they have a following of 30 or 30,000, because I feel like it's just so rewarding, and you never know what's going to come out of it. Like, you and I could have a conversation in this episode where I go, "Oh, that's an interesting thought Reed had. What can I do with that as a comedian? How can I make that funny?" or whatever. So it's just like, if your currency is the human experience, or I should say your raw materials for what you manufacture, for me as comedy and art and film and everything else, is human experience, why would I not want to put myself into as much of that as I possibly can? Which is why it shocks me when so many comedians like get in their bubble and they don't want to get out of it. It's like, it's counterintuitive to what it is to be a comedian.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great note to end on there, because that kind of wraps it. That just kind of encapsulates everything. Like, just go talk to other people, go actually live, go hear other people's life experiences instead of just assuming what they are based on the color of their skin or the state they're from.
And get weird with it, man. Put something in your mouth that you normally wouldn't, fucking get a little crazy. Experiment. That's why I laugh when people go, what do you know about being gay? Are you gay? I go, I don't know. No one's really pushed me over the edge yet. I don't know. If somebody helped me at dick point, I don't know what I would do. Right? I really have never been in that situation before, but they say in times of great duress, you find out what you're really made of. So if I ever find myself in that situation, I'll let you know.
I got your Twitter bio in the description and your website, but is there anywhere else you want people to follow you, keep up with you?
No, that's it, man. I'm mostly on Twitter. We do obviously the Jankum podcast that comes out on Mondays, and then I do a Twitter live spaces on Friday night. So anybody who's in this that is on Twitter would like to join us Friday, that'll be fun. We'll go over my invitation to the Sassandra show, which is another one of these situations of Black Show trying to get me to come on and have them call me racist for an hour. But
so you're gonna take it? Are you gonna take it this time and just be ready for it and fire?
No, actually, no. My rule is I'm never gonna go on the road to defend shit that I talk about. You're welcome to come on my show, or we can go to a neutral place to discuss it. I'm never going to go on somebody else's show where their producers can cue things up and package them and edit them in a way where it can completely be taken out of context. And listen, they can take it out of context on your own show with good editing. Look what they just did to Rogan, right? So, and people don't care about context. So why would you literally William Wallace yourself and just walk up and go, I know they're going to capture me and kill me, but that's what I'm going to do. Yeah. So no, instead I'm going to do what the right is terrible at. I'm not going to try to argue their stupid points with intellectualism. I'm going to ridicule the fuck out of them, and let's see how that one goes.
Speak to them in their own language, right?
Yeah, exactly. Oh, who's them? Who's them, Reed? How dare you?
Well, I appreciate the time. Thanks for joining me, man. I'd like to get you back again, especially if you can get extra canceled in the future. We could have some more excitement down the road.
I think the only way I could be more canceled than I have been so far is to be murdered for doing comedy. So,
let's not do that then.
If I ever get more canceled than I've been so far, I have to imagine that it'll be hard to book podcasts.
All right, everyone. If you're watching this live, I'm about to end, so go watch Tower Gang. I'm probably going to jump on there if they're still going, but I hate to steal the stream from them. But I got a busy week, so just had to jam this one in here. Episode 200 will be airing on Saturday night, I think at 8:00 p.m. Eastern time. I got a special surprise coming on episode 200. I'll tell you guys about that. But yeah, thanks again, Josh, and we'll catch all you guys on